Hello and welcome, or welcome back, as the case may be, to the Atlantean Archive. Thank you for stopping by today. Now, in this video, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about an event that's really big in the news right now, at least here in the United States, especially along the East Coast, although, from what I understand, it's also beginning to crop up in other places, even other areas around the globe. I want to talk to you about some interesting parallels between this event in the news right now and another event that happened almost a century ago. So, getting into it here. 86 years ago takes us to the fall of 1938. And as soon as I mention that date, I'm sure most of you will immediately think of its proximity to the greatest tragedy of the 20th century, the Second World War. In Europe at that time, Hitler had just signed the Munich Accords, which allowed Nazi Germany to march in and occupy the Sudetenland. There were fears, of course, of renewed war in Europe, and this measure was taken by Prime Minister Chamberlain and others on the hope of avoiding that. But Americans were once again wondering where this thing was going to go, and if it did break into war, is the United States going to get involved? And then, of course, across the Pacific, in Asia, Japan was already at war, expanding its empire. They had been at war with China in Manchuria since 1931. So you had the Japanese invasion there as they're trying to expand their empire. And even at that time, they were already aware that they were probably going to have to fight the United States as well if they were going to expand to the heights that they had in mind, extending their dominion across the Pacific. So you have this escalating tension in the world situation, to put it mildly. And a lot of people fearful for the future, not sure what's going to happen and who's going to get dragged in or when. And in the midst of all of this, aliens invaded Grover's Mills, New Jersey. Or at least that's what a lot of people thought happened.
Yes, it is. Now they've parted, and the professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and two policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. Flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait a minute, something's happening. Humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks for the automobiles, spreading everywhere. Coming this way now.
On October 30th, 1938, a young Orson Welles, working with the Mercury Theater on the air, broadcast a radio drama adaptation of H.G. Wells's famous science fiction novel, The War of the Worlds. This had been adapted for an American audience, so instead of the aliens touching down in Great Britain, as in Wells's novel, they touched down in Grover's Mills, New Jersey. This broadcast was done in the style of a live report, so you've got an actor who's portraying a news reporter at the scene as the alien invasion is unleashed. And they worked in sound effects and everything else they could think of to make this feel really authentic. And they did a great job. People at the time were impressed, and some of them took it seriously. Now, they did include a notice at the very beginning of the program. Hey, folks, look, this is a radio drama. This is a work of fiction. Nothing to see here. This is not real. This is for entertainment purposes only. But it seems that some people who listened to the program, quite a few rather, actually tuned in after that announcement was given. They missed all of that. They thought they were listening to a live report of an alien invasion on the United States based in New Jersey. Now, there have been many different reports about how extensive the panic was here. It seems like it wasn't quite as extensive as reports led on in the past, but many people did panic. You had many people calling in to the police stations in their area. They were calling radio stations. People in some places flocked to churches for comfort. Others were arming themselves, preparing to fight the aliens. And ultimately, Orson Welles came out absolutely shocked at the impact this thing had, apologized in the media, said that he never expected that the public would actually take this seriously. And matter of fact, he thought he was all washed up at the time. Of course, we know that was not to be. Now, the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast has worked its way into the American zeitgeist in some very interesting ways in the decades since it debuted. There was a film, The Night That Panicked America, that was based on the incident. And also, those of you who remember the War of the Worlds TV show from the late 1980s, that show was based on as a kind of a sequel to the 1953 George Powell movie with those awesome Martian war machines that so many of us remember so well. They did an episode that was dedicated to this. In that episode, the idea was that there really was an alien invasion in Grover's Mills, New Jersey in 1938, and the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast was a United States government cover-up.
The truth is, there actually was an alien invasion in Grover's Mill.
Now, as to the parallels that I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, these are some of the things that stand out to me. First of all, the world in 2024, as in 1938, is a very tense place. All of us feel like maybe we're being sucked into some kind of a gigantic wind tunnel that's going to deposit us into the midst of some kind of catastrophe. We can feel for what the people back in 1938 must have felt as they saw the Second World War looming. We've got, of course, the situation between Russia and Ukraine and Europe and the fears of how that may escalate and where we could all end up as a result of that. Then you've got the situation in the Middle East, which unfortunately I don't think is over with yet. I actually expect the worst to come yet. And then across the Pacific, we've got possibility of looming war with China. Not Japan this time, but with China. So wars and rumors of wars everywhere today, just as in 1938. A lot of people very tense, very concerned about the future. And then in 1938, you have this false alien invasion panic that sets in. And now in 2024, you don't have a panic, but we're not that far from a panic over these drone swarms that are appearing in the night skies over the eastern United States, centered once again, apparently, in New Jersey. I mean, it's almost like this thing, whatever's behind this, whoever's behind this, has a sense of humor or at the very least irony in how this is being staged. And we have another interesting backdrop here that they didn't have in 1938. If you'd asked most people back then, do you believe in aliens from outer space? Do you think there's life on other planets? They probably would have said no. I mean, back then, they didn't even know that there were other planets, at least not outside of our solar system. Today, of course, we have thousands of cataloged, confirmed exoplanets. But more than that, after decades of laughing off the subject of UFOs, or UAP as they're calling them now, unidentified aerial phenomena, after decades of laughing them off, after decades of not taking them seriously, after concluding that there's just incidents of people reporting swamp gas, misidentified objects, too much moonshine in the hills back there in West Virginia, or whatever, the government and then the media have done a complete about-face on this issue. Now we actually have whistleblowers coming out talking about craft that originate from unknown locations, that exhibit performance characteristics that are not matched by anything in our military arsenal or the arsenal of any country that we know of. Many people, including in the government and the military, are talking about the very real possibility that these things come from somewhere outside of our world. We've even had some startling congressional testimony to this effect.
Mr. Elizondo, you state in your testimony that, quote, advanced technologies not by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe, end quote. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
Well, ma'am, that's precisely why we're here. The problem is that, temporally speaking, over decades, not just the last 10 years, to put this in perspective,
are these private companies you're implying, or is this non-human intelligence?
It may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss.
Okay. Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? Yes or no?
Yes.
Does the U.S. government have any reverse? Okay, we already answered that question about retrieval programs. Do any U.S. contractors have the same?
I would prefer to address that in a closed session, ma'am.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned government employees who've been injured by UAPs, placed on leave, and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
I want to just start by just asking everyone on the panel or witnesses, and I had a chance to read all the testimony before, but just to set the agenda, just if we can go down real briefly, do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I also want to just go down the line. I know many of you have already said this, but I just, for the record again, just briefly, what do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
I echo my colleague's comment, sir.
Genuinely do not know.
Don't know, but we must find out.
So once again, we're in a situation where we've got global tensions, fears of global war, and at the same time, you've got a UFO flap centered on New Jersey. I mean, how strange does this get? And when I got to thinking about this the other day, I was like, I really need to make a video and bring some of this out because I haven't heard anybody mention the Orson Welles thing and how that was centered in New Jersey back then and caused a panic, and how we are now, as a result of this UFO situation, if you want to think of it that way, on the verge of a modern panic again in New Jersey. So food for thought, folks. Thought I would bring this out. It's at least worth it for the nostalgia it brings up, the retro sci-fi aspect there. If you'd like to listen to the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast, you can find that very easily on YouTube. Take a listen to that. Tell me what you think. Let me know what you think about the whole thing in the comments. Are the parallels that I'm seeing here just in my head, or do you actually see them too? Do I actually have something here? Again, it seems like, whatever is behind this situation, if it wasn't on the brink of causing a national panic, has a sense of humor, or at least a sense of irony, how they're centering all of this once again in New Jersey. So it's interesting to say the least, and very strange too. If you know anything about the performance characteristics of these drones and what they're saying about it, what police, what law enforcement, local government and all are saying, very strange indeed. Here's hoping that everything works out for our safety in the future, and that we get some actual answers before too long. I hope this is not one of those things that happens and it disappears and we never find out anything, especially with some of the honestly rather lame answers we're getting from the federal government at this point. But anyway, all of that just to lay these things out for you, and I hope it was of interest. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing the content with anyone that you think may be interested. And until next time,
I bring you a warning. Every one of you listening to my voice, tell the world. Tell this to everybody wherever they are. Watch the skies everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies.